different places, I would start seeing, how this would pop up in the disaster zones more and more. I worked in some that did hit the headlines and hit the news, in some places that, nobody would know about. But, the last major one that I was in Haiti in 2010. And in fact, in that country, I was requested to be part of, I was not going in there on that original grounds, but because of some of my background and experience, I was requested to be part of the child protection group and then the counter human trafficking group within the country, within that entire cluster system they have in the response. So, in that process there, being, close to that information nexus as well, and just seeing how bad and how pervasive the trafficking issue was, especially in the post-disaster context, was, it was really difficult to deal with. Because on certain levels, you just realize that, there's a business side to all of this, the commerce side to the financial incentives that are put in place. And they're
systemic. Like, there's a familiar pattern, and it's happening like in every town across the nation, across the world. And for me, from my perspective, just reporting on the different incidences, especially in regards to child protective services, it's always the same pattern. The same pattern is always there. Mm-hmm. And I don't think people realize just how close it is to everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And they don't realize how heavily ingrained this is, and the different places and the different markets there are for the weak and the vulnerable among us. So in scriptures, in the end of this first chapter of James, where God talks about, religion that God approves. If you are going to get together with people, if you are going to have any form of religion, well, religion that God approves is to take care of the widow and the orphans in their distress and to keep yourself unspotted from the world. Well, okay, who are the widows and the orphans? They are the most vulnerable in our society. They're the ones that are they have the least power. They are the ones that are the most at risk. And that's who, if people are going to come together in any form of religion anywhere in the world, that's what they should be doing when they're collective engagement. And if they're not doing that, then they're not engaging in something that is in line with what God says he approves. So now, if you look at then, well, what does the world do? Well, the world, which is anti-Christ, what they do is they say, no, we will go after and exploit the widow and the orphan. We will go after and exploit those that have the least power in our societies, those that have the least ability to fend for themselves. Those that are the most vulnerable are their preferred targets. And when you look and see also, too, how human trafficking takes place and the horrific nature of so many of these situations that are there, they extract the soul and destroy the souls of people for profit. And it's a very profitable, very lucrative business, so much so that many criminal organizations have been switching over to trafficking because it's more profitable and easier for them to do.
Yeah, because humans can be, guns can be sold one time, drugs can be sold one time, but humans can be sold over and over again. So it's a lot more lucrative. And and then you have the whole pornography aspect. Mm-hmm. And this is why, I'm so grateful for Ivanka Trump and Donald Trump's initiative, because there is a crisis. It's reaching crisis levels. It really and truly is. And we need people like you and everybody talking and educating on this issue, because it's so huge, and it's not something that any one person can tackle. I agree with you on that 100%.
Well, and it's going to take every good, decent person that is not for this, for human trafficking. It's going to take the people that are against it and that want to see freedom and want to see safety for themselves, for their children, for their environment, for their towns, for their cities, for people everywhere. It's going to take all of them first to open their eyes to see that this is going on, and then for them to be willing to do that part, that small piece that they can do to be part of that solution. So, for example, like, this is why actually even the 20 on 20, that's a part of that initiative too, is that I tell people in this world, it's unfair to make people aware of the issue and to not then give them something that they can do about it. Because we have to give people something that they can do, some way they can engage and be part of that solution. Because if we don't, what we're doing is we're contributing to their helplessness. We're contributing to their powerlessness, because now we are traumatizing them, and then they feel overwhelmed, and then there's nothing that they can do about it. I mean, for me personally, with the 20 on 20 and Human 2020, the initiative, for me personally, I tell people to first learn and engage and do what they can. I discourage people from trying to contribute to the initiative, me particularly for this, because I would much prefer somebody first go and learn and be involved and understand and do what they can in their own world and in their own communities, and that contribution will make a huge difference. So I think too, something else as well is people understanding the different manifestations of the human trafficking problem. I mean, labor trafficking is a massive issue globally, massive. So many of the goods and services that we buy are utilize that all over the world, and it is again a power dynamic. It is the fact that people are in vulnerable situations, and
a lot of those are children. The laborers are very young children, and
yep.
And you touched on something else that in the porthole to justice, a lot of our listeners, they're single moms, they're broken families, and they're struggling, and they're being targeted by a very corrupt system, and the children are being preyed on, and just the most horrific things happen when they're in the system. And I was hoping, because you are such an amazing, you are so amazing, I was hoping you could, we could pray a little bit before we wrap up.
To.
Yeah, I mean, I want to keep talking to you too after the show, but there's so many different aspects to this.
There are, but I think kind of digging down and understanding some of the roots is also helpful. So there's a spiritual aspect to this, because it's rooted in a very dark and a very evil place. This is, in my estimation, there's nothing more wicked and evil in Satan's kingdom that I've come across than this. So this is kind of their sacred right, their capstone to that system. This is kind of the taproot of that demonic tree that's there. That is the world system. So that's there. There's the power dynamics, the profit motive that's there. There's the elements of just people that are become enablers within that system, that have some benefit from it, that don't want to rock the boat. There's a lot of different pieces that are all there. That you take the guy that's making $250,000 a year, that's living a cushy lifestyle, that just has to turn a blind eye to certain things, and in his own mind he's like, he doesn't want to rock the boat. I mean, that's a problem. That's a problem when there's another thing too, is just even for us not knowing our supply chains, where things come from, how they reach us. So even with something like that, like one thing I try to encourage people is, because of the nature of how the supply chains for the goods that we buy are established, it is a bit tough for us to make good choices that don't reinforce that system. But what I encourage people is, I say, if you're unsure about a particular product that you buy, just cut your consumption, and just cut it by half. And if you can, because if you can do that, or if you can try to find things where the supply chains are clean, then what you do is even that will get the notice of people that are companies that might be benefiting from that type of use, but from that type of exploitation. So a lot of times what happens is that people turn a convenient blind eye to certain things along the way and along that chain so that they don't have to deal with it. But in the end, we continue to reinforce that machine. Mm-hmm. So just for us to say, okay, you know what? This is not a verified supply chain. This is not a good that people can tell me and look at me straight.
For like, if I can make an example, if that's okay.
Sure.
I paint on silk, and I paint these silk scarves. It's like a hobby of mine, and I order the scarves from a company that houses women and children and actually keeps them, from being trafficked. And the major part of the proceeds go to that. And so I purchase my hand rolled silks from this company, and I know that a part of those proceeds are going to go to help, provide for these women and children. So, So I just want to share that.
Well, no, that's wonderful. I mean, so you're going one step further with that, where you are purchasing from places that you know are directly engaged in the solution. That's definitely one step better. So I mean, basically, it's us being more deliberate about how we engage until we have some systems in place that do some of that for us. So because when we've had in the past in so many places corrupt governments that have not been by the people and for the people, they've been by themselves and for themselves, and so because of that, they've destroyed in many cases many places all over the world. I mean, the places that are unstable and places that are vulnerable are always routinely exploited. So, I mean, I've had, because of some of the international work that I was involved with, I've run into a lot of different people that have been involved in different levels and in different ways. And the ones that have a conscience, that care, they want to see a solution, but also so many times they have felt overwhelmed, because the systems itself are set up to encourage that type of corruption, and then there are some
the less fortunate and those that are poor, not just here at home but all over the world.
Yeah, and this is around the world, and in fact, that dynamic in other places can be worse because too that the cost of human life is so cheap in so many places, and they become disposable people. So in that they're seen like that, they're treated like that. So this entire thing is something. This is why my go-to is in prayer. My lead is to take this before God and to bring that there, because the situation in and of itself on a natural human level, it would be overwhelming on a human level, because it's not something that we as people, apart from a solution from God, could solve or fix. Let me give you another example of how the system is also reinforced. So take, for example, our financial systems. Well, we have been given, and we all participate in and trade in, a financial system that is specifically designed, that by its sheer design reinforces this issue and this problem. So, for example, when we, for example, today if I gave you $100, well, that $100 today, if we just put it on the table and we came back a year from now, that $100 would not be worth in a year from now what it is today, even though we both traded in that. Now, we all know this, and yet we still carry on and utilize a system of shared value, so we think. But the systems that are there, globally in the history of currencies, there's over 600 fiat currencies that have every single fiat currency that's ever been created by a government has always turned to zero at some. So every one of them, there's not, in the history of currencies, there's not been one that hasn't done that. But one of the issues for that is